G'day and welcome to the Inforunners. I'm Execute. Today we're joined by Algared, Badgers, and Tecton. Now, Tecton is joining us because he is a geologist, and this ship has a very big, I don't know if I should use the word big anymore, but a mining focus, and we thought it would be very interesting to get Tecton's take on thing. Me and Tecton did do a speculation video on this, and I do think, I don't know, Tecton, just real quick, yes or no, do you believe things have changed since we did that video?
Slightly. Not entirely, but just a little.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think I'll get general impressions from Algared and Badgers first. Algared, so your thoughts, just initial impressions. Let me have it.
It's more than I expected in terms of price, but not overly there. I think it still fits where I expected it to fit in terms of being a different type of explorer.
Yep. Badgers.
You're muted.
You're muted, mate.
Sorry. I think this is fitting very well as part of a kind of a diversification as opposed to trying to be a replacement for anything. I think the word that comes across with it is capability. And just all the little things that it's going to be able to do, perhaps not really, really well, but certainly have a go at to keep itself out and exploring in the far reaches where it doesn't need that much support.
Yeah. I think for me, and I kind of alluded to this earlier in the day when we talked about the MISC stuff, I think it is required. I think we need a diversification of what exploring is. And I think, actually, believe it or not, I'm going to kind of cut forward a bit. And I think that's what we should kind of talk about first is what are the different types of exploring. I think that might be a good place to start. Yeah, so Tecton, I'll let you kind of lead the field for this one. What do you think that is really different about the exploring of this this vessel over the Carrack, as an example?
Okay, when I look at vessels in tandem, I look at the Carrack and I see this is long-range exploration. It's general exploration. It's terrain, maybe. It's what can I expect in the system, and then jump points. That's its niche. It is very much for jump points. Then I look at the Odyssey, and I like the Odyssey, but I see, okay, it's got that downward-facing radar, it's got a mining tool, it's got a refinery. This makes me think mineral surveyor every time I look at it. And that might change over time, but currently that's where I'm sitting.
Yeah. And I think, Algared, when you talked about it, and the exact word you used, I 100% agree with you, and I've forgotten the first word you used in relation to the Carrack, but you said planetary explorer in regards to the Odyssey.
So astrological explorer for the Carrack, going out in space, looking at the actual system in general, and the Odyssey is more zero focused. And picks up what Paul said. Carrack is doing literal science for science sake, and the Odyssey is doing exploration for where can we make money.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not making money itself. It's doing the exploration so you can get your heavy mining vehicle in or your other stuff in to make the money, and that's why it's an explorer in that sense.
Kind of like industry versus Star Trek in a way. Like, you know, there's a certain grandeur to Star Trek. It's like money doesn't matter in the future, and it's all for fun. Where I think the Odyssey is a bit more about getting down to business. Your thoughts, Badgers, if that echoes our own.
Yeah, absolutely. Because at the moment we're used to kind of this progression. You've got your starter entry ship, you've got your mid-tier ship, and then you've got your larger, almost capital for people who really enjoy that part. And I think what we're going to see as Star Citizen goes on and on and on is a diversification at each of the levels. So it won't be, oh, I want the medium tier ship for exploring or mining or refining or whatever. It will be, which medium tier do I want, which most fits my style of gameplay. And I think we're seeing that early on here, and it's a good thing, I think.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that came out really early as well. Like we saw that with the starter ships. The idea of the starter ships was not just to give you a starter ship that you start with. It was starter ships that get you, do I want the general all-purpose Aurora? Do I want the more combat-focused Mustang? Do I want the more sciencey ship? Do I want, you know? And so there are those side steps, and they were looking not only design in look by profession, but also or by manufacturer, but also slight differences in how you were going. And I think we saw that in the starter ships, and now we're seeing in those larger ships. So I think it's a good thing.
We've been
Sorry,
saying that.
Tecton.
We've been saying that for years. I do want to actually ask Tecton a question that just came from what Badger said there. Do you still think there is room for a large mining vehicle now this thing's on the cards, Tecton? What's your thoughts on that real quick?
Well, I gotta say yes and no.
Okay.
It makes sense for us to have a large mining vessel. It does. But at the same time, I've always been a proponent for ground-based base building for when we get into N-tier mining. So it's a little odd for me to say yes or no to this one.
So I think we'll we'll delve into that a little more if that's okay, because I think the photos do speak 1,000 words in this case. And the photo I'm thinking of particularly is the one that you wanted to look at, Badges. So we can talk about that. We'll probably have to come back to this photo twice. But I'm going to flick over the bat to this. For me, I think this speaks volumes. And I'm just going to zoom in here. There's a rock coming down this bay. That tells me that this has got something to do with land mining.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think whether it's a happy coincidence or whether it's actually intended by CIG, I will leave up to people to decide. But in the old days, prospectors were people who just disappeared into the hills for weeks on end, went and found something valuable, and you know, then went and set up a mine, and a mining area would spring up around it. I think what we're likely to see with the Odyssey is something similar. It comes down, you've got rocks and prospectors potentially as part of its payload, which are able to go off and investigate the rocks, because this could be a planet we've never visited before. We have no idea what minerals we're going to get. So it sets them down, they set off and do their own thing, and then the Odyssey goes and does its own, prospecting, which could be as far as, the veins that we've been talking about for a while that CIG have mentioned, something larger. The only thing on the Odyssey capable of sampling something like that potentially is the Odyssey. So it goes off and does that. And then you've got a really nice cross-section of what's available on that planet, and it can be refined on board to check exactly what it is. It makes sense in my head that that's where this is going.
Yep. And I'm pretty certain, pick on this, if you go back to that previous picture you had with it mining in space, you can actually see that massive, great big round radar dish. And I think it really is just a ground survey radar dish. It is for finding those veins.
Yeah. And the only other ship that we know that has one only on the bottom is the Prospector itself, and that is the only other ship we know of that actually has images of it mining underground. I think while we're here and we're talking about it going to ground, Badges, can you talk about the unless Tecton's got something he wants to add specifically? Is there anything you want to add about the rocks and stuff, Tecton, or can I move on to VTOL?
No, I think you guys actually covered it.
All right, cool, awesome. Not let you have your say, but yeah, in this image and this previous image, you can see things that heavily hint at the VTOL. So, Badges, you spotted this, and Algared spotted it after you. So I'm going to let you two take care of this, and I'm just going to sit back because I didn't spot it till later.
Well, yeah, the bit that I think I located was on the larger engine that's at the back. What we saw and we talked about a lot offline was there was a section at the back that appeared to have the engine swiveled downward. For anyone that's seen a picture of the F-35 that's in the VTOL configuration, the engine, rather than changing thrusters, the engine actually pivots to point down. And that's what this image appears to show. Right in the background there, just above those two trolleys that are carrying crates.
Well, even
an engine pointing down.
Even above the man that's standing there, the red guy, you can see it above him. It's got fins on top of the engine that have folded up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You can also see it in this one that's taken off. You can see those fins against the horizon, like the skyline. That they are clearly up on top.
I I remember execute when we were talking about. I think when we were looking at the what is the Odyssey video and preparing for that, and you were looking at the way the engines worked, and we said, "Hey, this looks like it swivels," and you almost had this epiphany almost where you said, "Oh, and these top bits open, and that's where the exhaust comes out," and you clearly see that in that previous video one you had up where you can see where it's flying. So I think you're right. I think they are that's the exhaust plume, and you've got the engine pivoting. And the other thing I liked was the fact that when you look at those engines in close up, that round disky part of that engine or that nozzle really does look like the engine modules of the Reliant. So you've got that Xeon Heki style coming through.
Yep. Definitely a lot of they really drew on a lot of the other ships to bring this one to bear. That's for sure.
Yep. You look like you were going to say something, Tecton.
No, sorry about that. Just some mic issues.
No, it's all good.
I just want to make sure we weren't we were not cutting you off.
I think we'll go on to some of the specs. So, Algared, you're probably the most specky of us here, and I don't mean that as in the way you look. I mean as in you remember most of the specs. So,
the most speckled of a lot of this.
Yeah, okay, all right, Egg Boy. All right, I'll let you go then, Egg Boy. What's So I'll just flick it back to the normal camera. But do you want to give us some of the specs, please, on this?
Probably, I haven't had as much chance to have a look at the matrix of lines as Badgers has, but one of the things Badgers did raise was the fact that it was 1 to 6 crew. Yeah. I'd noted it was 6 crew, as a max, and that was, I thought, interesting because it was less than some of the other big ships, and it seems the crew are really good. Another thing that really struck me was the fact that yes, it's got three turrets that are twin size 5s. But what is unique about those compared to any other ship we've seen so far is all 3 of those turrets are remote. That really reduces that need for crew.
And I think that's highlighted in that 1 to 6 crew quite a lot.
And the question is, if you took the remotes out, would that mean we could actually increase those turret sizes to size 6s and have it as man turrets? So that is speculation on my part, but it just blows my mind to think of 3 remote turrets with size 5s.
I think it also shows how you will be off this ship and you will be out, maybe on the rocks and stuff like that, doing things out in the prospector and stuff like that. And Tecton, you were saying that you reckon the one person in the ship, like, what was it? You were talking about blades and the mining thing. So do you want to talk about
that? One of the things, we saw that there was a minimum crew requirement of 1. And given it has 4 medium computers, and we know how generally blades are supposed to work, one setup is going to be as point defense. So if you set all 3 turrets as point defense, one guy can run the mining head. The ship just waits. It's fully defended by its computer blade system.
Badges, the defense turrets, the shields, stuff like that. How do you find this from a military point of view? What's your take?
Yeah, I think this is lending all the more credence to the idea that armor, the really heavy role that it's going to play when it gets implemented is certain levels of guns just not getting through armor, because what you have is you've got a slightly larger shield, although it only has 1 generator. We're on a capital shield. So it's obvious that is where the Odyssey is placing its faith in its own defense, to give those turrets the chance to, defend it before people eat through those shields. I think one of the interesting things when you look at the pictures with this, it's quite clearly intended to have blades in its turrets, whereas it's an option for other ships. It has 1 more computer than, say, the Carrack. This one has 4 medium as opposed to the Carrack's 3. When you look at any of the pictures, it's got a Rock DS coming down the ramp in one of them. It's got 2 Tumbrel Cyclones driving up the ramp in another. You've got maybe someone in the cab flying the ship. You've got someone mining. There's 2 crews straight away. In all of those pictures, it's also suggesting that 2 crew are now off in a vehicle somewhere, plus 1 at least in its ship.
Yep. Even when you've got the mining in space, you've got the prospector.
Exactly. So it's expecting to have a large amount of its crew away from the ship for extended periods of time because it's got the capacity to have vehicles that require that. So I think they're actually lending themselves to, exactly as Tecton said, is those point defense bladed turrets as opposed to people sitting in the remote screens all the time and controlling them.
All right, then let's move on a little bit to the hangar and the uses for that. I think it might even be in this image that I've got up here. Or nope, it's on another one. The one where I did find the hangar doors were very interesting, how they folded up onto top of the engines. That was quite unique as well. But Tecton, I'll start with you, man. Obviously the Prospector is going to be a thing, so tell us your thoughts there, man. This ship in conjunction with the Prospector, please.
Okay, in conjunction with the Prospector. Generally, I see it is very inefficient to use such a large vessel to keep exploring all by itself. So sending something else along, which I've theorized before, the Prospector would eventually be able to do core data from things that were said, back in 2013, 14, whenever SIG first got talking about the Prospector. So it's going to be able to go do that, while this one has that massive radar dish, which looks like ground penetrating radar, honestly. It looks like we're going for that theme. And so this one will do a large scan of the area, will drill into an area, and then the Prospector will go out of that range, past where that is. That's one way to use it. You can also use it just instead of a Prospector, using another scanning-based vessel to do the same general thing, to get a good idea. But in general, I think mostly what you should do is probably run it with a defensive ship instead.
I'm just sitting here running all this through my head, and I'm like doing the comparison with the Carrack, and I think that's where we'll move on to now. Let's look at the negatives. How about that? Because we've talked a lot about what it has. Let's look at the negatives. So, Algared, do you want to? We've got a list here. Do you want to go through some of them for me, please, mate?
The first negative I see in terms of and comparison to, in a sense, comparison to the Carrack and what this doesn't have is it doesn't have jump point scanning sensors, and that is the niche, one of the niche things that the Carrack has. The other thing it doesn't have is that cartography table. The Carrack has that almost a system cartography system. This would really benefit from a planetary cartography map, so you could actually see the lay of the land and see where the minerals are and stuff. And that's what it seems to be lacking. And that, I think, is a deficit for the ship. It doesn't have that ability to let you visualize what you're seeing.
I think in the cockpit area, something like that would be really beneficial. Or even better yet, down in the mining area, if you could have a second person behind the guy going, all right, it's a bit over this way or something like that. But yeah, I don't disagree. Badges, do you want to list some more of those, please? If you have it up.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that would, one of the big things that stands out for me is the cargo side of things. So the Carrack has 452 SEU of cargo, or 456, something in that region.
Yep.
This thing's got 252, which is also shared with that front vehicle bay. Now, what you can do if you want is, it looks like in that hangar, it looks like there's a set of doors between the vehicle bay and the hangar. So you'll be able to store ground vehicles. They talk about being able to store ground vehicles in that space. So you'll be able to maybe take a bit of a hit on what ship you have. Maybe you take like a Pisces or something like that, and not sacrifice too much cargo. Of course, with a Carrack, what you're sacrificing in cargo, you pick up in modularity. So if you lose one of those cargo modules, you're picking up an ability to do more of what you already do, or maybe do something else. You're not sacrificing the vehicles that you can take, either ships or ground vehicles. So that's, that's something that the Carrack has really in terms of its strength. And I think the scanner thing, Algared's just, he's hit the nail on the head. We don't know what the scanners are going to do. It looks for all the world like they're going to start to specialize into certain areas,
Mm.
We have the jump point focus for the Carrack, but it has two. So the other one's going to be doing stuff as well. So it looks like very much you could end up with the ability to do more than just jump points, because I don't think we're going to have them added at a massive rate all of the time, even when the game's fully implemented. But finding other things, the Carrack's going to have purpose, so don't lose faith. Those scanners are going to do something. We just don't know what it is yet.
And even with the jump points, they did talk about jump points changing over time, so you do need to remap them. So even though it's a known jump point, they do need to be remapped regularly. So those mapping sensors on Carracks and Aquilas become really important.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking back to the Carrack and kind of what you said about cargo, and I started thinking down the line of that Star Trek versus the industrial moneymaker, and the fact that the Carrack can drop its modules off, like you could see them dropping off a cargo one in a humanitarian effort or something like that, or maybe one's a medical bay for the same reasons and stuff like that, where this doesn't need that cargo because it's not dropping them off either. So, because in a weird way, it might have that much cargo, but if it drops a module off to do something, it loses it completely. And I do think that is going to be a part of what that Explorer does. It is going to be traveling the long hauls and the big distances much more so. This can go there, but this is doing it for money. And I think that's doing it for much more grand reasons. And I do, like, when I really sit here, and I think all three of you agree with me, there is very distinct people. This is a money earner, and that is more the fun type of side. This is business. That is fun. Well, in my thought,
it's like the exploration of that system, and I always forget the system name. That's only been explored once. And the Carrack's done it once. Mapped the area. Check. Are any jump points here?
Starts with K, and it's that military system, and I always damn forget the name of it. But yeah, it's like
Helios or something like that.
Helios or something like that. But yeah, it's the one with MacArthur in it. It's and we talked about it in the last video too. So it is in there.
So that's where that's the type of thing the Carrack does. Where there's a great big empty, and you're saying, we don't expect anything out there. You don't send this thing. This thing is going to the asteroid field where you're hoping there's lots of minerals, or it's going down to the planet where you're hoping there's stuff that you can strip mine down the track. But you're not sending it into the big black because you're not expecting to find anything. You're only going to where you're expecting to find stuff.
I think I'm just going to read the last couple off here off the list. So there's no repair bay like the Carrack. So I think that also shows some more reliance on other ships and vehicles. No drones. So that's none of the extra stuff like repairing itself, or you could do survey drones, or you could do refueling other ships. There's a whole bunch of things, like, again, that humanitarian effort. I think humanitarian needs to come into play with the Carrack more. I don't think they talk about that, but it could be a thing. And then obviously with the like what Badger said, this is way more reliant on shields, where the Carrack's got that armor that comes over it as well. So I think and even in the way they say this is the best civilian explorer and that's the best military explorer, that makes a lot of sense to me. That's all armored and it will be going into a bit of combat. This looks like it's trying to avoid it at all costs, by comparison. Unless I've missed something, guys, do you guys just want to move on to the CCU stuff and recommendations, or as in like a final recommendations on whether this is a buy or a pass? Is that where we're at?
I think the only thing I'd like to touch on just before we move on is the potential, the possibilities you have running a Carrack and an Odyssey side by side. Because you're gaining a whole bunch of different things here. You've got the ability to transfer cargo from the refinery on board the Odyssey into the Carrack. The Odyssey's creating fuel, so it's extending the range of itself and of the Carrack as well. You're struggling a little less with your what do I put in each bay. And effectively, I mean, using a system you've never explored before as an example, the Carrack and the Odyssey turn up. The Carrack scans the system. It has a look at the different planets. It has a look at the areas around and points the Odyssey into the most geologically likely area to get results.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they back each other up and they support each other, and whatever the Odyssey, because one of the things the Odyssey will struggle for is food and water and that sort of stuff to keep its crew going. Well, the Carrack's got a whopping great hold it can have full of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then support it. Yeah. And
I
then,
could almost-
whereas the Odyssey can help refuel, the Carrack can, you burned out your component, we can repair that. And if you've got a damaged hull, it can send its repair drones over to help to do repairs as well. So they really do complement each other.
I could almost see the Carrack going back to come back and resupply an Odyssey in a way to the phrase. Yeah, I think we'll move on to recommendations here, because unless there's anything you guys want to add specifically, yeah, I think we've kind of covered it all. For me, I think this is the takeaway for me. That just the first thing I'll say before I head on to you guys, and then I'll give my recommendations at the end. But I think there is still place for both these ships, and that was kind of reiterating what you just said there, Badgers. I don't think there is, which one do I pick? I think you kind of go, am I a military guy and I like exploring? I go the Carrack. If I'm more of an industrial guy and I like exploring, I go the Odyssey. And if you just love exploring, that you can get both. I think that kind of it covers. They both cover everyone, and I still think there might be room for more explorers.
Room for more. Yep.
Mm.
And I think that'd be a welcome thing too.
Tecton, your recommendations on who you think this ship is for, and do you think it's kind of worth a buy, or at least a CCU?
Almost entirely, I think it's worth a CCU, even if you're not someone I'm going to put into this category, just because we never know what's going to happen. But when it comes to a category of people, I think will want this vehicle over the Carrack. Any mining org will probably be happy to have this.
Just to add to what Tecton said there, to put this in your little thought bubble, the Carrack is out and it's $600. This is not out and it's $700. So that means it's going to go up. So is it $800? Is it getting towards Pioneer Terry? Does it go higher? You've got to think of that. So at the end of the day, CIG is valuing this higher than a Carrack for a reason. So I think, you got to think about that at some point. And I like if there isn't more to it than in the mining, I struggle. So yeah, Algared, your thoughts on that? What's your recommendations, mate?
I think the fact that it's got a capital shield makes it, in the usual way that CIG rate things, a capital ship.
Agreed.
Just because of that. It's a $750 capital ship like a Polaris.
Agreed.
Both of those ships are not out, and so they are going to go up. And so, if you don't have a Polaris and you can get one, or a CCU to get it, same for this one.
Yeah.
Because you don't. Even if you're if you're in any way thinking of possibly getting it, get that CCU and lock that pricing.
Yeah. And I think, Algared, you would agree with me, like if you look at a Polaris to this, you could almost justify combat tax on the Polaris, so to speak, of $50, so to speak. Not that they're kind of in the same vein and there's a whole bunch other things we would have to compare there, but you get what I'm trying to say. Like I can see the price reasoning. So yeah. Badgers, your final thoughts on the Odyssey, please.
Yeah, I've got to say that they've nailed the MISC look into it again. Just looking at some of the concept art, especially the three of them in what appears to be a hangar bay, it just looks stunning. And I think from a point of view of whether or not you want to own it, this is I'm going to be at the leading edge of my corporation or organization, going and finding the richest veins, exploiting them first ahead of anyone else ship. If you want to go and find jump points and, track down long dead alien civilizations, I'd be in the Carrack. It's horses for courses, and I genuinely don't see an either or on this. But if you do, I'd love to chat about it down in the comments.
I'm going to start with what Algared said in our MISC video, and that they stated that this was a kind of mobile space station. And then Algared quickly followed up with the Endeavour being a mobile city. And I agree with that 100%. And I also agree that if you can't afford the Odyssey, seriously consider the Endeavour. It's not exactly in the same vein, but you're going to get a lot of gameplay there for that. But the Odyssey itself, if you have a Carrack and you are an industrial guy, I think this warrants some serious consideration. But you like our we've said here today, the planetary, or Star Trek versus money, or the grandeur. What's the words used, Algared? I keep forgetting the A word. For the astrological versus the planetary, and you need to look at that. I will definitely be picking up a CCU. And I'm now, this is where my mind's gone from this episode. I was like, do I upgrade the Carrack? Do I sit on a CCU? And now I'm actually at the point, do I get a whole second one? So I'm having a Carrack and I'm having an Odyssey. And that's just where I've gone in a 30-minute video. So I don't know where the rest of you are, but I'd love to hear in the comments below your fors and against, so to speak. I am really excited where exploration is going now. I think, to me, I thought it was this flat kind of one thing that all ships could do exploring, and I now think is very clear, especially with the different scanner types. It is knowing that they know that when they did the vote Algared, 75%, yeah, wasn't it?
About 75% was saying they wanted to do exploration.
I think that they've gone, right, we need to double down and we need to diversify. And I think that's a sign of this. And I think everything Tecton with the geology stuff, I think that's all going to come to pass. I think the pictures speak 1,000 words. Just the rock coming down on that. Like, why would you be taking rocks down to planet if this is just an explorer? It's got to have some kind of mining vein. And I also consider this working with other ships. I actually consider things like, I can even see some really long-range haulers that would come in to take some of the materials out, and that makes up for the fact of why it doesn't have a bigger enough thing. I can also see it bringing other bigger ships in, like not just prospectors, but I could see the Orion working in orbit. So you've got a ground, like a whole mine expedition,
I could see the Pioneer.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's another thing too.
Once you found that big site, you don't need, as Tecton alluded to earlier, you don't need the big mining vehicle. You've found all the stuff. Now you bring in your Pioneer, you build your mining base on top of it, like your oil rig, and go for broke. This
point, as our Badger said with the capital. Algared said it. Sorry, capital shields. This is a capital ship of mining, just like the Orion, but it's on a planet, right? And I like you take all the connotations with that. That screams Pioneer, as Algared just said. So you need many pieces in a cog to work in an org, and I think where the Orion can go out and kind of do what it needs to do, but you can back it up with other ships. This is clearly a lot more utilitarian support and will work more like that base. And they even called it a space station, right? So you could actually see this above the planet sending ships down if it doesn't go down itself. I can see all that. And I'm quite excited by it. And I think everyone here should be as well. Now I've kind of vented. I kind of didn't say much the whole show. I said little things all the way along, but that's what I've been thinking the whole time. Is there anything you guys want to add? All right.
Because people will ask in the comments, yes, I will get one.
I just got some CCUs for it right now.
And yourself, Badges? It's not a Perseus?
Too, but I'm poor.
It's not a Perseus. I thought your reply was going to be, but yeah. It definitely... I haven't brought a ship in a while, like 3 years, and this is the first one that's twisted my arm, and I passed it on many capitals, so we'll see. All right, with that, I think like this video. If you like this video, please consider subscribing, especially if you like this type of content. We do a lot of deep dive discussions. Look forward to that CCU chain guide coming in the next day or so. Anything else, Algared?
Leave comments. We do read every single comment. So leave a comment. Remember, be respectful. And if you like what we do, and you really want to go the extra yard, back us on Patreon. And I will be sending Tecton into the comments as well. So if you've got any geology-based questions, especially about
under the ground mining and stuff, because that's going to be a thing. We're pretty damn sure of that. Please forward them to Tecton. You can also check Tecton and our other professionals out on the Discord and shoot them questions. So military stuff at Badgers, but there's a whole skew of military guys, medical, all that type of stuff. So if there's anything that you think can be taken from the real world and put into Star Citizen, that is the place to ask your question. All right. With that, I think the recommendation is at least pick up a CCU because it's going to go up in value. I think that's the simplest takeaway, and that the Carrack isn't dead. That's probably the other one. All right. With that, he's been Algared, he's been Badgers, and thank you very much to Tecton for giving us his existence today. And I've been Execute, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Thank you.
Have a great day.